Why and how are North American and Cuban music so different? This is a map from 1727 of what basically was the New World. And look what's at the center of it, Havana. Look what's not on this map, New Orleans. New Orleans wasn't nothing yet. These dotted lines show you what Cuba was all about in its formative centuries, which is to say it was the truck stop at the end of the world. It was the place where the silver and the gold that was ripped out of the bowels of Mexico and Peru came back. While they were waiting to ship out, which could be weeks or months, they did what sailors do when they're hanging out. They, drink, dance, gamble, screw. Music was going on in Havana. Havana was a service economy. It had more, when the fleet was in season, sometimes triple the regular population of Havana was in town. So Havana wasn't even really a city in some formal ways, but it was the center where all the music and dance that was creolizing in all over the Afro-Latin world came together and got danced together in the same low-life taverns on the same docks and then shipped back to Spain, where they were bringing Europe's money supply. There's a weather site called windy.com, which has a tab for currents where you can actually see the Gulf Stream visualized. And this is in real time. This is right now. But this current has determined so much about American history. When this was the express lane in the sea back to Europe, this was, you couldn't go against this current very easily. And so here are the Spanish Catholics, here are the Anglo-American Protestants, and here's the Gulf Stream. Now there's another grid we got to superimpose on this, which is Catholicism versus Protestantism. New Orleans isn't the northernmost town of the Caribbean, right? But New Orleans is the northernmost town of something. It's the northernmost town that shuts down for Carnival, right? It's the northernmost town where the whole street turns out to celebrate this very Catholic festival that in classic New Orleans fashions, the Protestants took over. When New Orleans was annexed by Thomas Jefferson's men, there was not a Protestant church in New Orleans, and there was not a Catholic church in Boston. New Orleans is the northernmost part of the Catholic world in the hemisphere, as was Florida in the Spanish days. Think of the greatest antagonisms today in between two religions, and you'll be about right for the level of hatred and distrust between Catholics and Protestants. The Catholics had a very different way of relating to the African religions. And Spanish-derived slave system had a very different way of treating the enslaved than the Anglo-American system. Much larger than we can talk about tonight, but all of which is to say that these two musical systems are very, very different. One of the key differences, I think, is that Senegal, the presence or absence of the Senegambians. Senegal, as you may know, is in the northernmost part of the area that was slaved in Africa. This was the easiest part to get to North America from, because Africa is humongous, and look what they had to go to come from Congo all the way up and over. So the foundational Black cultures of the three great fountainheads of African-American culture were Senegambian in origin. There were Senegambians in the early days of Chesapeake, Senegambians in the early days of Carolina, and Senegambians in the early days of the Gulf Coast. And they have a very different music than farther down in Africa. And there are all kinds of key things we can point to. I mean, most obviously, swing, that feeling. If you listen to Senegalese kora music, that feeling does not really exist in Congo, does not exist in Cuba. And Cuban music doesn't swing. Cuban music is straight eighth notes, polyrhythms stacked together by means of a rhythmic key called clave. This is a very, very different rhythmic system than the one built on swing time, bent notes, blue notes, a simpler kind of texture, a very different way of making words fit to music, and different instrumentation. Of course, obviously the banjo, Senegambian derived, which we see in Virginia, which we see in Jamaica, does not turn up in Cuba. So these are two very different musical cultures from the get-go. Now, New Orleans was in a lot of contact with Havana once the Spanish took it over in the 1760s. And for 200 years or so, New Orleans's most important trading partner was always Havana. The embargo of Havana was an embargo of Cuban music, which had always been coming into New Orleans and always been renovating music in New Orleans. That stopped in 1961.